The sound was so violent it felt like the door might come off its hinges. A series of heavy, urgent blows shook the wood and made the glass panes rattle. It was the kind of dramatic pounding you only expect in films, not on your own front porch at sunrise. The morning light was still gentle, the air cool. My wife and I had been awake for about 20 minutes. I was in the kitchen halfway through my first coffee, wearing my old robe and socks. I froze, mug in hand, staring toward the foyer. The pounding came again, even harder. A sharp, commanding voice barked my name and demanded I step outside. I looked at my wife, who had just come down the hall, tying back her dark hair. Her raised eyebrows asked a silent question. I set my coffee down and went to the door. Through the side window, I saw dark uniforms and movement. 4 broad-shouldered men stood in a tactical formation. They wore dark navy shirts with large block letters printed across the backs. I squinted. The shirts looked cheap, the kind ordered from a novelty website, shiny under the early sun. The tallest man had a hand resting on a sidearm, holstered at his hip. I opened the door just enough for the security chain to catch. What is this about? The tall man stepped forward, and my stomach tightened. It was the neighbor from across the street. We'd had many exchanges over the past year, few of them friendly. Seeing him dressed like this was new. He wore wraparound sunglasses despite the dim light and a dark cap pulled low, with a smug half-smile on his face. "Step aside," he said, his voice layered with fake authority. "We have reports of a code violation and a potential security breach. Your wife needs to come with us for questioning." I stared. Questioning by the homeowners association? His smirk widened. "Neighborhood safety isn't a joke. Get her out here. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." Behind him, one of the men shifted uncomfortably. Another glanced at the street, as if checking for witnesses. Down the block, I saw a neighbor peeking through her curtains. Footsteps sounded behind me. My wife stepped into view, perfectly calm. She was wearing her dark workout jacket and fitted pants. She walked to my side and looked out at the group. The neighbor straightened. "Ma'am, you're coming with us now." Her voice was steady. "Do you have a warrant?" The words seemed to throw him. What? A search warrant? An arrest warrant? Any legal documentation whatsoever? She tilted her head, her tone polite but edged. "Or are you just playing dress-up this morning?" One of the men coughed into his hand. Another looked away, embarrassed. The neighbor's jaw tightened. "I don't need a piece of paper to keep this neighborhood safe," he said, his fingers brushing the butt of his pistol. The holster looked professional, but the weapon itself did not. My wife didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on his. In that moment, I saw a subtle shift in her posture, a settling of her expression into one of cool control. He had no idea what he was starting. She spoke without looking at me. "Why don't you call the sheriff's office? Ask for the duty sergeant. Tell them we have 4 men impersonating officers on our porch." The neighbor's lips curled. "You're making a big mistake." "No," she said calmly. "The mistake is yours." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of a nearby air conditioner. Then, from down the street, came the faint click of a camera shutter. I didn't know it then, but this was the first domino in a chain that would tear open our quiet life and pull us into something far darker than a petty dispute. 2 years earlier, a morning like this would have seemed absurd. Back then, we were simply chasing peace and quiet. We'd spent over a decade in a busy city. I was a civil engineer working long hours. My wife, as far as anyone knew, was a private security consultant. A vague title that satisfied curiosity. By our mid-40s, we were worn down by the noise and rush. Our new community seemed perfect. Tree-lined streets, tidy lawns, a place where people waved from porches and kids played until dusk. We moved into a 2-story home at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. The first few weeks felt like a second honeymoon. We hosted a cookout, met the neighbors, and started evening walks. That's when we met the man from across the street. At first, he was the picture of friendliness, tall, fit, with a clean-cut look. He told us he was a local police officer and the neighborhood safety chair for the association. He was helpful, even fixing a leak in our garage. His presence and the police cruiser parked at his house made the street feel extra secure. The first sign of trouble came about a year in. when we decided to replace our old warped fence. We wanted something sturdier for privacy. After getting all the necessary permits, we hired a contractor to install a 6-foot wrought iron fence, which was well within city code. The day the work started, his behavior changed. The friendly waves stopped. He began watching the crew from his yard, arms crossed. His wife started avoiding us. One evening, he came to our door wearing a polo shirt with a badge-shaped patch. He asked if we'd consider lowering the fence, saying it blocked his view. I politely refused, explaining we valued our privacy. His smile tightened as he mentioned his role with the association, implying it carried real power. When I closed the door, I felt an uneasy knot in my stomach. That was the moment the foundation began to crack. It didn't take long for that feeling to prove right. Less than a week later, I found a formal notice in our mailbox, on heavy paper, with embossed law firm letterhead. It cited a violation of community aesthetic standards and threatened hefty daily fines. When I called the law firm, a confused receptionist said they had no record of such a notice and asked me to email a copy, suggesting it might be a forgery. That night at dinner, my wife was quiet, stepping outside to take hushed phone calls. Over the next week, the neighborhood mood shifted. People who used to wave now crossed the street. Then notes began appearing, slid under wipers, taped to our mailbox. They were syrupy in tone, urging us to work with the community. My wife collected each one in a sealed bag. He escalated by organizing an emergency association meeting on the sidewalk in front of our house. Nearly 20 neighbors gathered. He stood by a sign that read, "Neighborhood Security Chairman," and gestured to our fence. "This isn't just about aesthetics," he announced loudly. "A fence this high could hide suspicious activities." Then he looked straight at our window. "I've conducted a background check. She works at a classified facility. For all we know, we could be living next to a threat to national security." A murmur went through the crowd. I stood beside my wife, fists clenched. "He can't do that," I said. "Oh, he can," she replied quietly. "But he just made the biggest mistake of his life." I saw a shift in her eyes then, the same one I'd see again later. I still didn't fully understand who I was married to. After that meeting, the atmosphere turned cold. Conversation stopped when we approached. The anonymous notes continued. My wife filed each one away. Then, one Wednesday night, I saw him outside with 2 men I didn't recognize, pointing at our house and nodding. The next evening, he came to our door, reminding us of a neighborhood safety check he'd scheduled for Saturday. "Refusing inspection sends the wrong message," he said. That night, my wife was clear. "Saturday is not a safety check. It's an intimidation play. We'll let him come. I'll be ready." The inspection came earlier, at 2 in the morning. The power cut out first, plunging the street into silence. Then came the crunch of boots and the click of our gate. Through the curtains, I saw 4 figures in tactical gear and those navy shirts with the association inspector lettering. They had clipboards and earpieces. 2 had handguns. He led them, sweeping a flashlight over our windows, then pounded on the door. My wife was already at the top of the stairs, fully dressed and alert. "Stay here," she said. She walked to the door and turned on the porch light, illuminating the group. "We've had reports of unusual activity," he said. "Association protocol requires an immediate inspection." "At 2 a.m.? Some things can't wait. Now, we can do this quick and easy, or—" She cut him off. "Show me the paperwork. A search warrant, an inspection order, anything with a signature." He blinked. "I don't need to show you anything. I'm a law enforcement officer. This is my jurisdiction." She opened the door wider, stepping into the threshold. The light caught a small silver pin on her collar. "You're on my property at 2 a.m., without a warrant, impersonating an officer, and armed. That's a long list of problems for you." His eyes flicked to the pin. "Don't try to intimidate me." "I'm not trying. This is me being polite." The silence stretched. The men behind him were no longer standing tall. One stared at his shoes. He tried to push forward. "Step aside. I need to make sure there's nothing dangerous here." Her voice dropped, low and controlled. "If you cross this threshold, You'll be trespassing, and you'll leave in the back of a real police car. She then asked me to call the sheriff's office and report armed individuals impersonating inspectors. His face flushed. You're making a mistake. No, she said. The mistake is yours, and you're running out of time to walk away. For a moment, I thought he might do something stupid. His hand twitched near his holster, but the man beside him murmured something and he finally stepped back. This isn't over, he snapped, pointing at her. They left, melting into the dark. The power came back on 5 minutes later. I turned to her. Who exactly are you? She didn't answer yet, but I knew an answer was coming. The house was quiet again, but it was a heavy, listening quiet. She finally turned from the window. We should talk. In the kitchen, with the kettle whistling, she looked me in the eye. My name is what I've told you. I'm the elected sheriff of this county. She let it sink in. 15 years in law enforcement, elected last year. I didn't tell you because I wanted a normal life here. But after tonight, normal is gone. I leaned against the wall. I thought you were in private security. That's what I let people think. When you hold this position, you make enemies. Sometimes it's safer if they don't know where I live. She explained that our neighbor was committing a felony by impersonating an officer. The stunt tonight was armed trespass. I could have had them all face down on the lawn. I didn't because I wanted to see what he'd do next. Now I know he'll escalate, and he'll make a mistake I can use. She placed a small digital recorder on the counter. I had this running. Every word is on here. What's he really after? I asked. I don't know yet, but people like him don't do this just over a fence. There's something bigger, and now, she gave a small, cold smile, now he's my case. The next morning, she was already at her laptop. He doesn't exist in any law enforcement database. He's not even a registered security guard. A property records search revealed his house was under a different last name. When she entered that, the hits came fast. Prior arrests for impersonating an officer, harassment, lawsuits for intimidation. He's been moving state to state for years, building trust, then using it to gain influence. She found connections to shell companies linked to a real estate investor previously investigated for property scams targeting military families. I think he's doing the dirty work, intimidating people so the investor can buy homes cheaply and flip them. This is an organized scheme. That afternoon, she installed 3 small, professional-grade surveillance cameras around our property. We let him think he's winning, she said. When he overreaches, we'll have him on tape. She began setting a trap. She posted a vague message in the neighborhood group about storing equipment for a county training exercise, hoping to pique his interest. He took the bait, soon caught on camera photographing her laptop screen through the window. She filed the footage away. She then contacted a retired federal agent she'd worked with. He confirmed the investor was still active and that our neighbor was one of his enforcers. If we can prove he's using intimidation to force sales, we can bring federal charges, the agent said. She escalated by leaving a fake, vaguely worded law enforcement memo in our unlocked mailbox. It was gone by nightfall. The next day, the camera caught our neighbor meeting with a man in a silver SUV, the investor. They were passing the memo back and forth, pointing at our house. She then posted a reminder in the group about the classified delivery, stating it would occur within 72 hours. Soon after, a camera picked up our neighbor on the phone saying, "We'll get them out before the delivery date." She had her connection. He called a public meeting for that Saturday afternoon. Nearly 30 neighbors gathered on the grassy strip near our house. He stood before them, wearing his fake badge, flanked by 2 men with clipboards. He spoke about community standards and security hazards, then pointed to our fence. "And that's not all," he announced. "My investigation reveals she is engaged in activities that raise serious concerns for national security." That's when my wife stepped forward, calm and composed. "Before you go further," she said, "show us your police identification number." He refused, calling it sensitive. She turned to a projector and displayed the county's official roster of active officers, showing his name was not there. She then showed a receipt for a fake badge shipped to his address. The crowd murmured. Next, she played the garage camera footage of him photographing her laptop, followed by the audio clip of him saying, "We'll get them out." His composure cracked. "She's twisting things. You don't understand." The crowd erupted with questions. His men looked uneasy. He jabbed a finger at her. "You think you can make a fool of me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Her eyes locked on his. "No, you have no idea who you're dealing with." His voice rose, his hands twitching. "Don't listen. She's a threat. I've seen her files." His hand dropped to his belt. People gasped. A woman screamed. Chairs scraped as everyone scrambled back. He yanked the pistol free, leveling it at her with shaking hands. "Everyone shut up. Listen to me." My wife didn't flinch. Her voice was steady and clear. "You just made the worst mistake of your life. You're pointing a firearm at an elected officer in front of 30 witnesses and on camera." She nodded to the phones recording everything. "You're out of time." It happened in a blur. She moved sideways, inside his line of sight. One hand struck his wrist, the other clamped the barrel, shoving it upward. The gun discharged once into the air. In less than 3 seconds, she had twisted the weapon from his grip, locked his arm, and dropped him to his knees. She pulled zip ties from her pocket and secured his wrists behind him, her knee firmly between his shoulder blades. The crowd stood frozen, then someone began to clap. It spread. He cursed and spat from the ground. "You think this is over? You have no idea how deep this goes." 2 of his men had slipped away. She instructed me to call the sheriff's office, reporting 1 in custody and 2 at large. Real deputies arrived quickly. A detective took one look and said, "He's been on our radar. You just handed us the probable cause we needed." As he was loaded into a patrol car, he twisted his head toward my wife. "You were targeted long before you moved here. When they send someone else, it won't be me." The investigation unfolded rapidly. A joint task force served search warrants at his house and properties tied to the investor. They recovered boxes of files, fake gear, and detailed notes on target families. The 2 men who fled were captured. The investor was arrested days later. The scheme, it turned out, had victimized dozens of families across multiple states, often targeting military or law enforcement households for their discipline and stability, pressuring them to sell so properties could be flipped for profit, a plan that was about influence as much as money. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood changed. The association reformed with transparent rules and no fake security titles. My wife declined a leadership role but began teaching a popular community safety class. Life settled into a new, stronger normal. We had our peace back, but small reminders lingered. A postcard arrived with no return address, just a photo of a suburban street, and the words, "You stopped one of them. There are more." She filed it away and made a secure call. Sometimes I'd find her late at night, reviewing lists of names. One Saturday, a white van drove by a little too slowly. The driver looked at our house a bit too long. She watched it turn the corner, then locked the door. "Probably nothing," she said, "but I'll keep an eye on it." The quiet now felt different. It wasn't an ending. She was the sheriff, sworn to protect this place. And I had learned that when she sets her mind to defending her people, she doesn't just win, she changes the entire landscape. This quiet felt like the start of something bigger.